We have seen the reaction on the streets to a jury finding George Zimmerman not guilty. But what about in your own home? What are African-American families taking away from this verdict, especially those who have young men, sons, nephews? Listen to what Charles Blow, he's a New York Times columnist, what he told CNN about talking to his own boys.
I used to tell my boys, don't run because they may think you're suspicious. Well, actually, now I have to say don't walk slowly because that also means that you may be suspicious. We have to figure out what is the pace for which a black man can walk in America and be beyond suspicion. That is a crazy conversation to have.
The pace that a young black man can walk. I want to bring in these three women. CNN legal analyst, former federal prosecutor Sunny Hostin, also Jenny Hutt joins us. She's an attorney and Sirius radio talk show host, and Donna Brazile, our CNN political analyst. Ladies, welcome to all of you. And Sunny, let me just begin with you because you were sitting right there next to Charles, and also I know you have he's younger, but a 10-year-old son. What do? This is like the sparking of conversations I know across the country.
Well, it's interesting. My son's school did discuss the Trayvon Martin case, and so I didn't inject the case into our home. I oftentimes don't talk about work at home with my children, but he asked me several questions about it. He's away at sleepaway camp. I don't know that he knows what the verdict was, but I will tell you, as a mother of a brown boy, it has caused my husband and I to have this discussion. What do we tell him now, not only about the verdict, but about perhaps how he is perceived in the United States, how he may be perceived by other people? He is a very tall child. He's a thin boy, but I want to be able to advise him appropriately, Brooke, on how people perceive him, that perhaps, as I've often taught him, that they should perceive him by the content of his character. Maybe they won't. Maybe they will still perceive him by the color of his skin, and he needs to be prepared for that. And I think that's going to be a very difficult discussion, quite frankly, that I'm going to have with him this summer.
Well, that was a dream of Dr. King's, but clearly it's tough. It's tough being a young black man, according to a lot of people that I've been talking to. Donna Brazile, what are you hearing just in communities around?
Well, there's a lot of anger, disappointment, frustration, shock. It's appalling. From the store to the shopping centers that I've been to church, and just sitting on my front porch and listening to young black boys, young black men, others, their own emotions. It goes back to the time when I heard my parents, both my mom and my dad, tell my brothers, my three brothers, how to conduct themselves. Even though you're not a criminal, some people might assume you are. So watch what you wear, watch what you say. When you're stopped by the police, be humble, respect your dignity, your pride. Hear my parents tell my young brothers, now hearing my brothers with 5 young sons, having to tell their sons, this must stop. We need to allow black males, black females, whites, Hispanics, any child who wants to go to the grocery store to buy some fruit or candy, we should not profile them. We should not assume the worst. We should treat every child that they're special, they're precious in the eyes of God. And the notion that this young man was unarmed, was murdered, it has touched an emotion in everyone, including black women. But also, I've heard from my white female friends. It's touched them. It's touching my Hispanic friends.
I see you nodding, Jenny.
People are touched by this.
Jenny, go ahead.
Yeah, so it has touched all of us. It certainly touched me. I'm a white Jewish woman with 2 white children, and this is heartbreaking. There's an expectation, a reasonable expectation, that we send our children out into the world, they're going to come home to us. This sort of thing should not happen, should not have happened. And like Sunny, my son's at sleepaway camp, and I got to see him this past weekend, and I said to him, I'm waiting for the Zimmerman verdict. And I got to tell you, I'm terribly disappointed, as I think most of us are. It's horrible.
But here's the other part of this, and this was interesting. I was hearing from a colleague on this show team, and she was saying there are a lot of late teens, early 20s African American men who were saying to their parents, "Why is this case such a big deal? I have friends of pink, purple, green, black, blue color," and the parents are having to sit them down and say, "Son, let me tell you something about civil rights and what has happened in this country. You cannot be colorblind." It seems like the younger generation, to some extent, is unaware. Have you all heard that at all?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. When my son first came home to talk about this case, I come from a multiracial background, and you sit around my table at Thanksgiving, you think you're, at the United Nations, and so I have raised my children perhaps wrongly now, to not see people by race, that we are all part of the human race and that your race doesn't define you. And I've got to tell you, I was stunned by the verdict. But I do think, unfortunately, now you have to have these discussions, because it appears that we aren't living in this post-racial society because we have a black president. We aren't living in a post-racial society because, you know, you think that perhaps the civil rights movement was a long time ago. Race is a real problem. And I think it took this case, quite frankly, Brooke, to open up my eyes to that. When I was looking at this case and analyzing it, I was in Sanford, as you know. I was looking at it purely from a legal perspective, purely from the perspective of a former prosecutor. I did not think race was a part of this case. And I think from the reaction that I've gotten, the hate mail that I've gotten, the angry tweets calling me a racist, it was my naivete. Race is very much an issue still in our country, and certainly I think it was an underlying factor in this case.
Ladies, we're coming back to you. Sunny, Jenny, Donna, stand by. Coming up, we're asking our other panel, the question is, can you profile without being racist? That's next.